Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the No DQ live recap of night 2 for AEW Dynamite's Fyter Fest, as well as WWE NXT's Great American Bash. We have a very eventful night of wrestling action to recap. So let's go ahead and get started with this. A lot of news to discuss. If you're watching live, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to everybody watching, whether it's live or on demand. Make sure if you enjoy this video to click on that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and tell a friend. Word of mouth. Spread the word about the live streams and NoDQ.com. Very much appreciated. We'll start with AEW Dynamite. We kicked off with a tag team match for the AEW tag team titles. We had Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page defending once again against the Private Party with Matt Hardy. And by the way, shout out to Cindy. Happy birthday, Cindy. Part of hashtag Team No DQ. We had this tag team match, and the champs had a pretty hot start. They were chopping the hell out of Mark Quinn, but then Private Party got into the zone. You had this big cannonball from Cassidy all the way to the outside onto Page, and all of the spectators, the wrestlers that were there at ringside. Quinn hit his big shooting star, got a near fall, but then Kenny Omega made the save. Omega hit a V-trigger to prevent gin and juice, and that led to Adam Page hitting the power bomb onto Cassidy, and then Omega and Page did their V-trigger buckshot lariat combo to pin Cassidy and retain the AEW Tag Team Championships. Moving on here, we had Lance Archer versus Joey Janela in a one-on-one match, and when Archer made his entrance, he brought out Sonny Kiss. He threw Sonny Kiss onto Janela before the bell rang, and Janela had a decent showing here. He did come back at times during the match, got in some offense. He wanted to use a chair at one point, but the referee would not let him, and Archer ended up hitting a pounce on Janela, which was pretty brutal. Janela just bounced right into the ropes. Jake Roberts tried to interfere during the match. He got on the apron, but it actually backfired because Sonny Kiss came off the top with a 450 onto Archer, but Archer managed to kick out of Janela's pin attempt. And then the match finished up when Archer hit the blackout to Janela, not in the ring, but from the ring apron to the floor through a table that was set up. Archer brought Janela back into the ring, and easy win, 1-2-3. Lance Archer defeats a very game Joey Janela. Janela definitely was not squashed in this match. 2 solid matches to kick off our show so far. Moving on here, we had Darby Allin in a vignette, and this time he did a coffin drop from this huge-ass platform into that, whatever it's called. You know, if you go to one of those bounce house venues and you jump into the foam pit, whatever it's called, I guess it's a foam pit. But yeah, he did this big coffin drop into the foam pit. And then we had Taz and Brian Cage come out for an interview segment. Of course, next week we are getting the AEW World Title match between Jon Moxley and Brian Cage. Moxley, of course, staying at home, playing it safe with COVID-19, and his wife, Renee Young, being sick. Taz had a special announcement to make, and he unveiled the FTW Championship, which, for those of you that are too young to remember this, back in ECW, Taz had his own championship, the FTW title, which isn't the most impressive looking belt, I must say. Kind of looks like the TNT title a little bit. And he gave this FTW title to Brian Cage and said that next week Mox's ass is done. Mixed feelings about this, you know, it's kind of a nice throwback and it's nostalgic and all that stuff. FTW means F the world, by the way, for people wondering, like Nelson in the chat room. But the problem with this is that unless you're a die-hard ECW fan and you've been watching for all those years, way back in the day, like, who's going to remember this? Like, I cannot imagine too many people even knowing what the hell an FTW title is. But yes, it was a reference to Taz's gimmick in ECW with the title over 20 years ago. So yes, this is something that was catering to the most diehard of diehard fans, which, you know, AEW does pretty much have that audience of the most hardcore wrestling fans in the world. So probably a good deal of AEW viewers are aware of the FTW title. Although Cindy says it's very new to her. So there you go. We had an 8-man tag team match between the Lucha Brothers and Butcher and Blade against the Young Bucks and FTR. The heels came out. Apparently, they stole FTR's truck for their entrance. FTR made their entrance with these gray jackets, and I'm not a fashion expert. I'm one to talk, but I thought that these were really ugly jackets, and FTR might want to ditch these in the future. Just my opinion, though. And again, I'm not one to talk, but woof. So anyways, we had this 8-man match, which was pretty damn awesome. I mean, it's pretty much a given with these guys. You know it's going to be a lot of craziness, a lot of action, total nonstop action from these guys. Lucha Brothers kicking the shit out of Harwood. Bucks coming in, doing drop kicks, lots of high-flying stuff. I think JR even compared them to the Rock and Roll Express. And for a while, we had the Bucks and FTR working together, doing a spike pile driver together. Later, they worked together and did a bunch of splashes. And there was a bit of a ref botch here because the referee was doing a 3 count. Phoenix made the save at the last second. However, like, the referee had to stall with the 3 count for Phoenix to come in for the save. So, yeah, they kind of messed that one up. They biffed that. And then Phoenix ended up doing this springboard destroyer, taking Nick all the way to the outside of the ring onto the guys on the outside. Pretty crazy spot in this match. And then the Lucha Brothers hit the LB driver to pin Matt Jackson and secure the 1-2-3 victory over the babyfaces. And next week, it's going to be the Lucha Brothers versus FTR in a tag team match at Fight for the Fallen. Should be an interesting show. Shaping up to be one for sure with that match, plus the AEW World Championship match, and Cody's doing another open challenge. Big Swole tried to arrive at the arena, but she was denied access. Not because she has COVID-19, but because she was served due to what happened on Dynamite the other week with Swole abducting Britt Baker. And apparently, according to Tony Khan, Swole has been suspended in the storyline. We had Nyla Rose in a handicap match, picking up a pretty easy win here. And after the match, she cut a promo and said that actions speak louder than words. She is hiring a manager because she sees all these other people in AEW having success with managers, so she's going to have one as well, you know. She's not quite intimidating enough as it is. She needs a manager. And she vowed to win the women's championship. We had a segment from earlier in the day with Colt Cabana, who was all bruised up, and Brody Lee was saying he expects Colt Cabana to be out there for the 6-man match and suck it up, Buttercup. He didn't actually use those words, but that was the gist of it. We had a tag team match, Dark Order versus SCU, and the rest of the Dark Order was out there standing on the ramp. And Colt Cabana broke up the best moonsault ever pin attempt, and then Brody Lee came in, hit the lariat onto Daniels, but then had Stu Grayson tag out to Colt, and Colt was allowed to score the pinfall. So, you know, Brody Lee's trying to make Colt a happy guy and build up his confidence and all that stuff. Why Brody Lee wants to recruit Colt Cabana, I have no idea, but that's the storyline AEW is going with. So there you go. And then we had Big Swole return, and she confronted Britt Baker and did something to her, which I actually missed. Maybe somebody in the chat room can let me know what happened with that. But Britt was all crying and upset. She did something. And then we had our main event, which was Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy headlining the second week of AEW Fyter Fest. According to Will, it was a piece of paper that was thrown in her face. So, yeah, it wasn't anything too significant here. Thank you for that, Will. I appreciate it. Best Friends came out with Orange Cassidy, but Cassidy wanted to go at it alone. He wanted to do the noble thing against Chris Jericho. And he was still wearing his bloody shirt because this was serious business. But, of course, Jericho came out with his buddies Ortiz and Santana. Cassidy put his hands in his pocket right at the beginning because he knows Jericho absolutely hates it. And Cassidy had a pretty good start here, but then Ortiz used his loaded sock on Cassidy. Jericho got the advantage for a while. Cassidy came back, got a number of near falls, hit a super kick after doing his fake super kicks, or his, Orange Cassidy super kicks. He actually hit a real one, got another near fall, hit a big splash, another near fall. He kept coming very close to putting away the legend Chris Jericho. He even did a dive to the outside onto Jericho and Ortiz and Santana, all three at the same time. Jericho got the walls of Jericho on, but Cassidy got out of that, and desperation really set in, and I'm not sure if it was Ortiz or Santana. One of them poured orange juice or splashed orange juice into the face of Cassidy. Best Friends ran down to the ring to make the save finally. Where were they when the sock was used earlier? Took them long enough to even the odds. And while this was all going on, the referee was distracted. Jericho used his baseball bat, Floyd, or whatever he's calling it now, hit a code breaker, but Orange Cassidy kicked out. Cassidy hit a Michinoku driver, got a near fall, but then Jericho came in with the Judas effect elbow and finally put away a very game Orange Cassidy. So really fun main event match. Jericho made Cassidy look really good, and Cassidy put up a great fight, and Jericho still had to use the heel tactics to beat Cassidy. So I enjoyed it. Very entertaining stuff here from these guys. And overall, Dynamite, solid show. Probably give it a B or even a B+. It was close. It was somewhere in there. Maybe a B almost plus. But it was a very solid episode of Dynamite. Fun show, as always, from AEW. The only thing I was kind of about was the FTW title thing. I mean, it really just feels like filler. Like they needed to kill another week to build up for the Moxley match. So Taz was like, well, I got the FTW title, so let's do something with that. And they were hyping it up as this huge announcement. And I hope AEW doesn't go the route of TNA where they start doing all these big announcements and it's really not that big of an announcement. So it was all right. But again, like referencing something 20 years ago, I mean, it's good for the hardcore audience that's watching, but I can imagine like any casual fans watching this, they'll be like, huh? And if TNA did this, people would shit on it. So, I mean, that's the thing. And if WWE did something like it, people would probably shit on it as well, being like, well, why are you guys referencing something from 20 years ago instead of coming up with fresh ideas? So, yeah, mixed thoughts on it. All right, so let's move on here to the NXT show, part 2 of the Great American Bash. Candice LeRae made her entrance for her street fight with Mia Yim. She got jumped by Mia Yim before the match could begin. Mia was all about revenge on Candice. We had a street fight, so we had all the weapons, trash cans, kendo sticks, chairs, you name it. They ended up fighting into the crowd, and they fought by this platform where Candice set up a table right by the platform. And you know how this goes. When somebody sets up the table, they're usually the one going through the table. And sure enough, after Candice used a fire extinguisher on Yim, she attempted to suplex Yim off the platform through the table, but didn't work out for her. And Yim drop-kicked Candice. She fell back all the way through the table. We had a commercial break, and back in the ring, Candice buried Yim in these chairs, and there was another table set up on top of the ropes in the corner as a platform. Yim had some brass knucks, which Candice ended up stealing from her, used the brass knucks, and then Candice, on top of this table in the corner, did her swinging neck breaker onto the stack of chairs below to score the 1-2-3 victory. Candice LeRae victorious in a very good street fight between these two. Strong match to kick off the show. And Ken, terminated by Google with a $5.30 super chat, says, is this LeRae's best match to date? Solid match, but the only downside is that there was no dragon suplex on a table spot. Circa Taz from ECW. Well, I think there was enough Taz on AEW Dynamite where you really do not need it on NXT as well. But yeah, probably her best match. She did have, I think it was against Io Shirai, and I believe I was there for this one. Maybe somebody in the chat room can find out which takeover this was, but Candice had a singles match. I think it was against Io Shirai at a takeover, and that was a really good match. So that one was up there, and this was neck and neck with that one. So somebody in the chat room, if you can, find me what match that was when that took place. Very much appreciated. And thank you for the super chat, Ken. I appreciate that as well. We had Bronson Reed versus Tony Nese in a match that cannot imagine too many people would care about. Bronson Reed got his ass handed to him by Karrion Kross, and Tony Nese is, just doing the cruiserweight stuff. Bronson picked up the win with the big splash off the top. Takeover Toronto. So thank you for that, Colin Andrew. I appreciate that. And Nick Glavin also pulled it up for me. So this was basically just Bronson Reed, looking strong after taking that loss last week. That's really all it was. Not much to it. Yes, Colin Andrew says I was there. I did mention that. I believe I was there for the match. I just wasn't sure which takeover it was. I was at a couple of them over the past few years. I was at the Toronto one, and I was at the War Games one in 2018. So I wasn't sure which one it was. We had Robert Stone backstage trying to once again recruit Shotzi Blackheart to join him. Killian Dane then showed up and attacked Stone, and then Shotzi ran over Robert Stone's foot, and he was just hysterical, going crazy. A bit goofy, a little bit of comedy here, but I guess why not? Add some flavor to this show. You know, a little comedy here and there doesn't hurt too much, so it's all good in the hood. We had Isiah Swerve Scott versus Johnny Gargano, and Gargano doing some cruiserweight action now. I guess he's out of the world title picture for the time being. Swerve Scott had a pretty good showing here, did the house call kick, but could not make the cover. He got another near fall, and then Gargano, the veteran that he is, rolled to the outside of the ring when he was in trouble. And I believe it was Mauro Ranallo, that said that Gargano has a high ring IQ. Gargano then hit a reverse Hurricane Rana on the outside, and then got Scott back in the ring, hit the one final beat DDT for the win. We'll see what happens with the North American title or the NXT. Well, I kind of just screwed up there because I gave away the result of the main event before we got to it, although the spoiler was out for a while. Keith Lee won the title, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. He won the world title, so he's a double champion. My point was that maybe the title will be vacated like when Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6. Perhaps there'll be a North American title tournament and Gargano can fight for that. We'll see. I mean, that is Keith Lee going to defend both titles? I mean, who knows? We had Santos Escobar with his group up against Breezango and Drake Maverick. Maverick got his hands on Escobar, beat him up a little bit, but he had an injured, I think it was a neck, I'm not sure, but he had an injury, and Escobar took advantage of it and hit the Phantom Driver to pin Drake Maverick. So I guess Maverick is just in that storyline where he just cannot get the job done. He did manage to keep his job, but he's still not able to get the best of Escobar. So we'll see what happens next for Drake Maverick if he can come back again and be the underdog that prevails. We'll see. We had Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae celebrating backstage, and Gargano talked about Finn Balor getting in his way, and he'll deal with Balor at some point. I guess maybe we'll see another match between these two down the line, because it was Balor and that triple threat that led to Gargano not advancing to compete for the NXT World Title. Candice said that there are a few wrongs that need to be righted. We had Santana Garrett against the returning Mercedes Martinez, who's been out of action. Pretty much just the showcase for Martinez. She picked up the win with the Fisherman Buster. And then we had our main event, which was Keith Lee versus Adam Cole, champion versus champion, NXT North American Champion Lee versus NXT World Champion Cole, winner take all. Cole did some trash talking in the beginning, said that Lee is messing with the wrong guy. The Ball Sack Champion with a $1 super chat. Thank you for that, I suppose. And we had Adam Cole sidestepping Lee on the outside of the ring. Lee crashed into the barricade / plexiglass. Lee then came back and did a very impressive deadlift superplex. And then Lee hit the Spirit Powerbomb, but Cole managed to get one finger on the rope to break the count. Cole came back, hit the last shot, but Lee kicked out of it. Cole went for another one, and Lee countered with a lariat, which basically turned Adam Cole inside out. Pretty badass spot there. And then Cole hit the Panama Sunrise. Lee, however, kicked out at 2. Cole hit a series of super kicks. Lee kicked out again. Cole was getting visibly frustrated at this point. He exposed his knee. He took off the knee pad and went for another last shot. And then Keith Lee managed to counter the Panama Sunrise, hit the Spirit Bomb once again, then hit the Big Bang Catastrophe. 1, 2, 3. Keith Lee, like I said, is your new NXT World Champion, ending the longest NXT World Title reign in the history of NXT. Big celebration with confetti and pyro. But if you saw that guy from Indira Shear's Instagram page, the photo he posted, you got spoiled. You know the outcome here. But still, great match, great moment here. And as the show was going off the air, we had Killer Kross up in the stands watching the celebration. Looks like we are going to, at some point, have Killer Kross versus Keith Lee. Just a matter of when. So great show overall, and we'll see what happens with NXT. I'm very curious to see the numbers. Like, I think NXT will win again, 3rd week in a row. We'll see if the spoilers coming out have a positive effect on the viewership. Like, when Mick Foley won the WWE title, it leaked online, and WWE actually published the result on WWE.com, and it actually worked out in WWE's favor. And Tony Schiavone, everybody knows the story about Schiavone giving away the result on Nitro. We'll see. I mean, AEW kind of poked fun at it on being the elite, even though their entire show leaked on Reddit. Those spoilers turned out to be accurate. So we had one NXT match, the main event, have its spoiler leaked, but AEW's entire show got leaked on the internet. Who's running a sloppy shop now, Taz? Anyways, NXT, great show. Main event was awesome. Definitely a show you should check out. So I'm giving NXT a solid A. One of the best NXTs of the year. Maybe the best NXT since the show where Rhea Ripley won the championship from Shayna Baszler. This was up there. I mean, this might have been the best NXT of the pandemic era, maybe of the year. One of the best for sure. So make sure you guys check out NXT. And as far as AEW goes, I would say check out Jericho versus Orange Cassidy and the 8-man match. Those are definitely must-watch matches. Everything else was good too, but I mean, probably not as must-see as the 8-man and the main event for AEW. And that's all I got for tonight, everybody. Now, next week, I'm going to change things up. I'm going to do one show per stream. So Wednesday night, I'm going to recap Fight for the Falling. And then Thursday night, I will recap NXT. And I will continue to recap NXT if there's demand for it. If people are not interested in the recaps, I may drop NXT. But at least next week, I will recap both shows, but on separate nights. AEW Wednesday night, NXT Thursday night, and we will have predictions on Tuesday. If I keep that format going, the No DQ review will likely be on Tuesday nights moving forward. But speaking of the No DQ review, check it out tomorrow night, 7 Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great night. Stay positive. Be safe. And I will see you all next time.